Welcome to another episode of Diversity in Tech. I am your host, Joanna Udo, and today I wanted to interview a woman in another STEM field. In this case, it's engineering. I cannot wait for you to learn all about Melanie. And by the way, Melanie is a rocket scientist, and there is a whole lot of rocket talk and Tesla talk. So let's get into it. Welcome, Melanie, to the show. And
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for having me. This is quite the honor. Thank you.
Absolutely. I am so excited. I have a lot of things that I want to talk with you about. I was really impressed by your Instagram profile and some of the stories that you shared in the post by, I forget who it was, Women in Engineers, maybe? Or
Yeah.
engineering girls. So I love that story, and I was like, wow, our audience could really benefit from learning a little bit more about you. So thank you for agreeing to be on here. And I'm gonna let you quickly introduce yourself and tell us who Melanie is, and before we get right in.
Well, who's Melanie? That's a good question. My name's Melanie Wullaert. I was born in Chicago, but I was mostly raised in Germany. So I am actually German. I came back to the States and lived here on and off for the last 12 years at starting age 20, I think. So it's been quite a back and forth for me. But yeah, currently I'm a structural dynamics engineer for Blue Origin up in Seattle. I'm working on the New Glenn rocket that doesn't exist yet, but we're working on it. So yeah, it's been a ride.
Awesome. Yeah. Talk to us about how you got started in that, or what made you decide to go into mechanical engineering.
Oh, that's a fun one. So I was just terrible at math in school and physics back in the day. So I went through German high school, and I was just terrible at it. I started like first or second grade in math, like was already not really good at it, and that just kind of stayed that way all the way through my school career back there. I was never interested in it either. I didn't understand what its purpose was. It was just difficult and hard, and I didn't understand applications for it. And then later in life, I kind of, afterwards, I watched that movie Donnie Darko. Um,
Oh
that
yeah.
has like, yeah, I know it's not the most typical movie that people reference for getting into STEM fields, but that was it for me. They mentioned time travel, but not in a DeLorean, and I'm like, what? I don't get it. And and they mentioned that book by Stephen Hawking's Brief History of Time, and
Mm-hmm.
I bought it and read it, and suddenly I got hooked on this, and I just started reading these things for fun, like on the DL, and I don't know, it just kind of evolved from there. And so yeah, I did some audio engineering, and I was a merch girl, and I toured with bands, and then I became a nanny. Nothing ever really stuck, and I couldn't support myself financially. I kept having to move back with my mom in Germany because I kept running out of money. And yeah, it was, at 27, I'm like, well, you got to figure something out a little bit, kind of just like find something that you're good at. And I remember sitting on my bed. I was watching The Big Bang Theory because, of course, I was. And suddenly I was sitting there and I was watching Sheldon scribble something on his whiteboard, and and suddenly it just hit me. I'm like, you understand what he's doing there? Like, I mean, you
Yeah,
don't understand, but you can tell what he's doing, and it's correct, and it
yeah,
doesn't look foreign to you. And I'm like, oh my God, maybe I'm not bad
that's
at
it.
this. So a while later, I started taking pre-engineering classes at community colleges just to see if I could cut it.
Mm-hmm.
And I started having really good grades, and I don't know, fall 2015, I was accepted into UW Mechanical Engineering Department. So, yep.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That
Mhm.
is so insane. just the
I
way
was
that you stumbled upon it.
yeah. I think I was about 32 when when I finally got into UW. Yeah, when I was accepted. So I did all my pre-engineering classes, my associates, like at a community college, because I wanted to work during the day still, so I could support myself and pay
Right.
rent and bills and all of that life stuff.
Yeah, because those
So
never go away.
no, they do not.
Wow, it's incredible because I always say that the things that we watch and the people we surround ourselves with can make such a big difference in our life. And it's like just something as a simple movie or a book that you read and watching a TV show, and here we are building an entire career out of it.
I know, just like 12 years later. I wish I would have known this like 12 years ago,
Right.
but it took me a while.
But everything happens for a reason, and obviously uh, this was the perfect time, right? It's never too late, because some people would go, well, I wish I had known about it 12 years ago, then I would have pursued that. But you learned about it now and you did it,
Yeah,
right? What matters
yeah.
is that you're still doing it.
Yes, and I also think that all the life experiences on all of the different jobs I've held have contributed to me actually getting internships and jobs afterwards. So I don't regret any of it. I mean, it made me into
Yeah.
the person that I am today. I learned so much in those 12 years, even though it was just a struggle, a complete
Right.
struggle bus every day. But
So then you got an internship into NASA. How did that happen? How did you decide to apply for that? What was that process like?
So yeah, that's another funny one, really. I my grades dropped a lot once I hit UW. It's engineering school is hard.
Mm-hmm.
And UW is a very good engineering school, but it's difficult. And so I also had a little bit of a nervous breakdown due to stress. So my grades just dropped, and it's always difficult to get those internships because a lot of those places still screen for GPA.
Mm.
And mine was just not a 3.5 anymore. It had sunk to probably a 3.1 or 3.2 at the time. And and we have these career fairs at school, usually one in the spring and then one in the fall. Some are engineering and like STEM specific. And I didn't want to go really because I don't like crowds. I'm 5'2", and I had not paired. I like in my UW sweatpants at school. And but I had like a 2-hour opening in my schedule that day during that
Mm.
career fair, and my friend asked if I wanted to go with her, and I was really struggling. I didn't want to go. Again, the crowds just make me really anxious. Everyone's taller, everyone's pushing. So yeah, but I'd heard that there was a NASA stand there, someone from NASA, and I'm like, you know what? Might be something for the grandkids down the road to tell them about. I talked to a real NASA engineer. So I don't know. I printed out my resume, tried to update it, printed it out, and walked across the street to the career fair with my friend. And there was barely anyone at the NASA stand, which was really strange because usually I assumed there would be just a whole line of people trying to talk to them. So I get there and I start talking to this lady, and I tell her about my interests. And I just read about this fluid structure coupling system that NASA had been working on, and I got super excited about it. And so she looks at me, she's like, I think you should talk to my husband. So I guess her husband was there with her. He was the other engineer. And so she shuffled me over to him. And I think so when I get really giddy or excited, I do this happy dance and like start clapping my hands and like jump from one leg to the other. It's really embarrassing, but that's my German happy
It's
dance.
awesome. I
So
have
I
to
don't
see a
know.
video
I
of
must
this.
have maybe I'll make a video someday. I don't know. It's a lot of information about me that I don't know if I want people to know. Regardless, I walked over to him and we started talking, and he must have seen something in me. He's like, who's this heavily tattooed person standing in front of me excited about fluid structure coupling? and he said that he was actually the manager, or used to be the manager of that department that was working on that project, and I should apply to this internship. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, sure. I mean, I can apply, but there's going to be millions of other students trying to apply for this.
Right.
And so he gave me his card and told me to stay in touch, which I thought was pretty awesome. And I walked out. And I mean, I applied for it just because I felt like, he'd urged me to, but I didn't really think anything would come of it. And a couple months later, I got an email from NASA asking me in an email, would you like to accept this internship? And I'm like, excuse me, what? What?
Wow.
There was no phone call. There
No
was no phone interview. No, nothing. Just nothing.
Oh.
Just an email with 2 selection buttons of deny or accept. And I'm like, accept.
Yeah,
And
like who denies that?
like, I'm like, I'll figure the rest out after. It's fine. I can do this. And so that's how that happened. And then I went to
Wow.
Huntsville that summer, and I worked at the structural dynamics test lab there. And I did actually ask my supervisor at my mentor, my internship mentor, and Alex McCool is his name. Yeah, that's his real name, Alex McCool. That's the other
Cool.
part where I
He's
thought
so
it was like a
cool.
prank. I know. That's the other part where I thought it was just a prank email, because they said my
Right.
mentor was Alex McCool. I'm like, that's not even a real name. Come on.
Right. Oh.
So no, and I asked him at a couple weeks into the internship, and he said that um, that that guy Jim Turner at the time, he had mentioned me to them and said, if you see that name in a stack of applications, pick her. So he put in a good word for me, that's the day everything changed for me, and that's the day I learned that just go, give it your best. You can try. If you make a connection with a person, you network with these people, something may come of it.
Right.
If I hadn't spoken to Jim Turner at that day at the career fair, I don't think any of what followed would have happened, at least not as
Absolutely.
smoothly as it has. So it was
Right.
kind of a fluke situation for me. It still kind of baffles my mind. But
But
yeah, so that happened.
there was definitely something about you that made him interested in talking to you, or his wife, really,
Yeah.
right? And then
Mm-hmm.
him, but the conversation must have struck them as something special,
Yes.
which you just never know, right? They say, put
Mm-hmm.
your best self forward. And whether it's a question, just ask it, because what's the worst that can happen? They say
Exactly.
no and you move on with your life, or they say yes and you start working for NASA, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I mean, it's usually a situation of you have everything to gain if you can get that mindset in a little bit,
Mhm.
Obviously don't do anything reckless, but yeah, you just have to put yourself out there a little bit.
Right. And how long was that internship for?
It was just 10 weeks in the summer. It was one of the shorter ones. Usually they're 16 weeks, like a whole
Okay.
semester, but
Hmm.
the summers are 10 weeks, and UW is on a quarter system. So that was the only one I could have done without having to skip out on like 2 quarters at school, because UW goes by quarters. Most other schools go by semesters. So I did the summer one.
Gotcha. And what was that internship like? So obviously it wasn't just like run some coffee or do this random paperwork. They actually got you doing like important things.
Yes. So I was the only intern in that department, which was surprising, but I guess it's a pretty small department. It's a structural dynamics test lab. ET40 was the designated name for it. And so what they do there is they do structural dynamic and static testing, but I'm in the dynamics team. I don't do static stuff. So
Okay.
yes, so vibration testing to see if components, rocket components, or like small satellite components or big satellite components, if they survive certain dynamic events, startup of engines, like liftoff, max Q, all the things that you always see in all the SpaceX launches. They have that little tracking thing, see when things happen. And all of these dynamic events, they have to test components for that to make sure that connections don't break during strong vibrating events or shock events like stage separation of rockets and all of that good stuff. So that test lab does that. And so I was part of that. And I got to, for the first week or two, my mentor told me, just go and like look around, see what's interesting to you. You can play around with stuff, just don't break anything. I didn't. It's good. Put things back to where you found them. I'm like, yeah, I'm an adult. I can do this. I was a daycare teacher. It's a lot harder if you tell a 5-year-old that.
Yes.
Yes. Put it back where you found it. Where did I find it? I'm like, I don't know.
You only know that, okay?
Yes. So and I had done some random vibration stuff prior to that, and I'd learned about it in school a little bit, or actually by myself from reading. So, and there was something called modal analysis, which is another kind of another kind of dynamic investigation into how structures behave under a certain dynamic situation or impact. At what frequencies do certain components or certain structures resonate and deflect in certain ways? So that is what I eventually did my project on.
I don't think I've ever talked to somebody in my life that has done anything related to rockets ever. So everything I know about rockets is from Wikipedia or following Elon Musk.
It's I didn't really know much about rockets either. I didn't, I grew up in Germany. We had Mr. von Braun, but he got shipped off to the States back then, but like I never had any role models or anything in that realm. I didn't, let alone any female role models in STEM, but I was not that robot building rocket kid at all.
Right.
So I never watched Star Wars. I don't think, and Star Trek, my friends made me watch one Star Wars movie before I went to NASA, because they were like, they're going to ask you things. Like, you need to at least know some names. They might kick you out if they find out that you don't know anything about Star Wars or Star Trek, because they're all Trekkies. I couldn't handle it.
But let me guess, they didn't, or did they?
No, they did. No, well, it did come up, and then I told them, and they were a little stunned, but they didn't kick me out. So,
well, that's good.
It was all good. Yes.
So that goes right into another topic that I love, which is not having a role model, right? Because there are a lot of other jobs, right? You've got your teachers, you've got your nurses, you've got your doctors, and maybe some types of engineers, and people know who those are. You can probably walk around and find people that do those jobs. So what was it like being, because everything you learned about this from books, TV, but nobody to really tell you this is what to expect, this is how you prepare. So how did you adjust to that, and just learning things on your own, or maybe making friends once you finally started on the path to be successful in it?
Oh yeah. That's still a rough one for me. It's weird because I come from such a different background. Like I said, most people that you'll meet, they're like, oh, I wanted to become an engineer since I was 5, or like I wanted to be an astronaut, and I was just never that person. So when I started school, most of the people, number one, were 12 years younger than me, 12 to 15 years younger than me. Number two, it was hard to find things that I had in common with them outside of being interested in engineering things. And because they would reference certain people or engineers or certain public figures, and the only one I know was Neil deGrasse Tyson,
Right.
So yeah, Elon Musk, of course, at the time then, but it was just really weird. It's, if you've never been part of that world before and yet you're not familiar with it, it was really odd. And then I have dreads, and I'm heavily tattooed and have piercings. So it was just, that was another one where I just, from an exterior, it just seemed like I wasn't fitting in, and I always kind of stood out which was terrible when you wanted to skip a class, because every professor would be like, we're like, where's that heavily tattooed lady in the back? Like, I know she's not here. You're like,
Yeah, you
so
can't. It's like good and bad, right? You
it's good
stand
and
out
bad.
because
It's like, yeah, I stand out at career fairs, but also in class when I'm trying to skip. So yeah, I have to really bunch up if I want to hide everything. Wear gloves and a scarf, because yeah,
oh,
that ship has
yeah.
sailed for me. So
Did
yeah.
they treat you differently at all just because you look different, or did you not
Um,
feel like they did?
in the States, especially here in the West Coast, not so much. One of the main reasons I chose to move to Seattle at the time was because I knew that finding jobs here, being heavily tattooed, would not be a problem, because no one really cares about that stuff here. I've
Okay.
had people like be like, yeah, when I see untattooed people, I feel like it's weird. So yeah, so I
Interesting.
think I
Okay.
think I don't know if it was subliminally part of why I chose it, or just because I really like the weather here. But yeah, so I came over here, and yeah, so here was fine. I think there's sometimes you would see some like initial some looks, but
Mhm.
they adjust it really quickly, and then they're like, all right, she's still a nerd, it's fine, you know.
Right, right.
Yeah, it was a
Something
little
cool
bit
about
different
being a nerd.
yes, it was a little bit different in Huntsville, Alabama, I'm not gonna lie. At
Oh,
NASA. Different story when I
yeah.
walked in there. Remember, no phone interview, no pictures exchanged, and
Oh,
I just walk
right.
in. Yeah, that was a
They
fun
had
one.
no idea what to expect.
No, they had no idea. It was great.
Oh man, how'd that work out? Did people like look
In
at
the
you
end, it
weird
worked out
and
fine. Yeah, it worked out fine in the end. But that was a fun one. Those first 2 weeks, a lot of like, who is that? I'm like, you hired me for the
I
summer. I'm that person.
I work here now.
Yes. Yeah. So, yep.
So how did you get, when was the internship in your program? Were you almost done with college at that point or?
I had done so. I got accepted into UW in 2015. It was supposed to be another 2 years in college, but like I said, I struggled a little bit there for a while with my stress-induced nervous breakdown. So I had to cut down on classes a bit. So it took me 3 years to finish. Summer of 2016 in a local Seattle local company. Um, and then summer of 2017, I had that internship. And then I graduated June of 2018, and I already had my job offer with Virgin Orbit at the time. So
Oh, okay, so you already
I
had your
had that.
job
So I
offer
did, yeah.
before
So
you
before
had.
I graduated, yes, which is it's a it's a privilege, not a right. Trust me, that was
Right. Oh, I know.
really nice. Yeah.
So how did you get that position? You just applied or
Yes, so there was an intense hunt for trying to get a job in dynamics. So the thing about structural dynamics is that you usually do not find job openings for that without having a master's or a PhD, because vibration math is pretty convoluted, and most people have a harder time thinking in the frequency domain versus the time domain, which probably doesn't tell you anything right now. But so I was lucky in terms of right now, this space industry boom is really huge. There's a
Mhm.
lot of companies out there, and only so many people that understand dynamics and frequency stuff in terms of structures. So there were a couple companies that had lowered their standards down to minimum bachelors. Um, and I applied, and the ones that I found I applied to, and I got a couple hits back, and interviewed at 3 companies, of which Virgin Orbit was one of them. I had done the interview, the phone interview, the technical one, and the whatever the recruiter screen phone call,
Mhm.
and they invited me out there to interview in person. And I don't know, me and my then boss, we just clicked. He's still probably one of the best people I know to this day. And he picked me. So, yep.
Nice. And this company that you work for, Blue Origin, did I get
Yes.
that right?
Now I'm at Blue Origin. Yes.
Okay. And so they still do rocket related stuff.
Yes. So Virgin Orbit did too. Virgin Orbit, they're building. And I have to say they now. It feels weird because I keep wanting to say we still because it's not been that long since I left. They build a small rocket launcher that gets clamped underneath the wing of a 747. Then the 747 takes the rocket up to 35,000 feet. They drop the rocket. The pilot, which is also a lady, her name is Kelly. Um, the rocket drops off. The airplane turns away, and then after about 5 seconds, the rocket engines, the main engines start, and it shoots up into space, and it just deploys small satellites. It's supposed to make deployment of small CubeSats and smaller satellites cheaper and more accessible to smaller companies. And in Blue Origin, I mean, they do New Shepard is the little rocket that this year we're hoping, or we totally are, we're going to launch humans into space. That one's for space tourism. It's a tiny rocket. But I'm working on the New Glenn rocket, which will hopefully in a couple years return humans to the moon. So
That's
that's going to be a bigger
amazing.
rocket. I know. I'm effectively on a moon program. It's insane.
Oh my
It doesn't
goodness,
even make any sense.
that sounds like so much fun though, and it's just something so impactful, right? It happens once in a
Yeah.
lifetime. What are the chances that you get to be
Yeah,
that close to
no,
it?
I know. What are the chances? I think we live in a simulation. I don't think any of this is real. Someone made
I
me as
know.
their character and was like, let's take this poor little heavily tattooed human over there. She's a nanny. Let's see what happens if we put her in engineering school and make her a rocket scientist. Oh, let's give
Oh,
her a Tesla as well. Let's see what happens if she gets a Tesla. I bought that as a graduation gift to myself.
okay, so I'm gonna have to get on a whole new topic about that, like in a minute.
Her name is
What's her
Buffy the
name?
Vampire Slayer. Yes.
I love that name. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I am so honored because I feel like I'm geeking out. Is what are the chances that I get to talk to a person that is working on a moon program?
Me
So I'm
too.
in
And I'm
the
talking to
simulation.
myself. Yes.
Um,
Oh, it's crazy.
so what I'm gonna just jump into, if there's a little girl or a parent out there with a little girl that aspires to be a rocket scientist or really has no idea what they want to do, and thinks, rocket scientist, I don't know if I could ever do that. Because that seems like something that is so far away, right? It's
Yep.
just not things that we wake up and want to do. You have to be groomed for it or something, or at least that's what
Mm-hmm.
people think. What would be
Yeah.
your advice to that parent or that little girl?
Um, I think the first thing is always going to be don't let anyone discourage you. And I don't think that these stereotypes are as intense as they used to be back in the 80s when I was a kid. I mean, this was 80s in Germany. So in a very tiny town somewhere in Germany, like 900 people in that town. It's smaller than most high schools here in the States. So, but here, those stereotypes are still put upon young girls sometimes and boys. I mean, it goes both ways. If you see a young boy who says, I want to be a nurse or I want to be a daycare teacher, they suffer from that same kind of, I'm like, oh, that's not for you. But for young girls, it's like, if you have that spark, just don't let anyone extinguish that. Find other girls that are interested in the same thing. I know there's several organizations out there that they could join, as space camps even, or like little rocket clubs. And I guess that would be later years when you're maybe in school or high school or in college. But yeah, I mean, and with the internet and like Instagram and like all of these outlets, I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot easier to find other people that share that interest at a certain same age, maybe even within the same town, in the same town or city, and just, you know, keep working at it. Find little projects that you like to do. Um, I don't know, try to find a mentor that might be able to, you know, help you network or find other opportunities, or if you have questions that you can ask. I used to love at Virgin Orbit down in Southern California when I worked there on weekends. We had a lot of groups, Girl Scouts actually come in on weekends, Girl Scout groups that we would show around and explain rocket things to while looking at an actual rocket. So that was fun. Yeah, just don't let anyone take that away. And if parents see that spark in their girls, just nurture it. Don't
Mm-hmm.
extinguish it.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to do that, just help them along. Don't push them, obviously. If they want to become a ballerina, you know, don't try to force them to become an engineer. It's not going to work.
Absolutely.
But,
Right.
you know, if you see it, don't try to push them into a different direction. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very worthwhile career. It's a lot of fun.
I love that. So then this next message is for people probably like you. They already spent maybe the last 10, 12 years of their life doing something else, right? Whether that is
Hmm.
being in a different career completely. And they want to transition careers and they are on the fence of, going back to school and being a college freshman, when the majority of the people in that class are going to be so much younger than you. What would be your advice for them?
My first advice would be to look into some either community college classes or even some online, you know, refreshers. I did a lot with Khan Academy to see if, you know, if I even understood what's going on. But community college classes really, I think, are your best chance because number one, they're still cheaper than university classes and they're night classes. So a lot of times they offer them at night because they know that a lot of people are trying to keep their day jobs and
Right.
they only have time for classes in the evenings, and just test the waters there and see if that is something that you even if sometimes you think you're interested in something because there's
Mm,
this glamour around it or like
right.
this excitement, but once you have to get into the nitty gritty of it, it might be completely different. It's like I always had a lot of people be like, oh, you get to tour the bands, that's so cool. And I'm like, yeah, I sleep in a van with 6 guys. We don't get to shower very often. I have
Oh,
to get up
yeah.
really early. Then I chase them around. I'm like, it's not as glamorous as it looks on the outside, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
I think you just really have to, you have to face the reality of it. But if it's something you're interested in and you think that you can succeed in, test the waters in a way
Mm-hmm.
that you still have a way to fall back on. Like financially for me, I was poor. You know, I could pay my bills. I did well being a nanny. And I had a great support in that family actually. After I started school back up, they supported me a lot and I got lucky in that way. But to, to drop your job and go back to school is scary. Number one, if you don't know if you're going to succeed. Number two, if you're trying this and you have to spend a lot of money on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally get where that apprehension comes in, but I sat down and I thought, you know what, this is, you still have about 40 years of like professional life ahead of you that you have to
Right.
work on a daily basis. That is still a lot of years. If I can spend 5 or 6 years on trying to reorientate myself and try to get that degree and do something with, you know, that's 40 hours a week that you're spending at your job, maybe more, mostly more even. if if the idea of you doing your old job for the rest of your life really makes you depressed or just pisses you off, think about the idea of like putting in 5 or 6 years of hard work and it's going to suck, you know, excuse my French, but
No, it's
after
fine.
that, yes, but after that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you might have that chance of having a job that you enjoy going to 5 days a week for the rest of your working life. And I think that is part of what got me through it. I'm like, I can't see myself doing what I have been doing for the rest of my life. I'm struggling. I switched jobs and ideas all the time. I had no place in what I was doing. I was lost. And then I found something that I thought I could be happy in. And at that point, I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. So I just went for it. And I think that is something that you have to keep in mind when you're thinking about changing careers. It's scary, but if you really want it and you understand the sacrifices that you have to do for it to get that degree or whatever, technical colleges, anything, you just have to kind of fight through it, and then after that reap the rewards.
Absolutely. That is so important because I like that you bring up that point about how we talk about the glamorous parts of a lot of jobs, and no one ever talks about the bad parts. And you watch TV, you're like, that's what I want to do because that looks like fun. And then you get into the field and you're like, okay, nobody told me about this part.
Yes.
So I like that, doing some research and seeing what those are and actually preparing yourself to deal with those. I think that's really good. So I also like that you mentioned that, because now I wanted to ask, what is the least thing that you like to do in your current job?
In my current job? You know what? That's a tough one because I love going to work. Like sometimes for a while I'm like, weekends? No, boring weekends. I want to go back to work, which is the opposite of what most people think. That's when you did the right thing. What's my least favorite? Can you ask me again in 10 years when I'm a little more jaded?
Yeah.
I don't,
I'll come back 10 years.
Emails. No, okay,
yeah.
emails. Oh my God, email threads at work sometimes. It's just, be a little bit more scarce with your reply all. Like, I don't need to read everything, it's hard to get through all of that information if you get like 100 emails every day and most of them are reply all. And I'm like, okay, I stop.
Like I lost you guys at the second email.
You guys. So, I'm like, are you even still talking to me? Am I part of this conversation?
I think we can all relate to that though.
Yes,
I feel like every workplace, there is so much email. People reply all. They write unnecessary information because I'm the bullet point kind of person. Give me 5 top things that you're asking me in this email.
Yes.
And
PowerPoints.
I don't need stories.
Yes, PowerPoints with more than 5 bullet points on a slide. Go home.
Yep.
Go home and redo it.
I am with you on that.
It's not information.
Like, this is not your notes. This is supposed to grab my attention. I can't read from this far anyway.
Yes. But yeah, no real downsides yet, but I'm still new to it. Right. I've heard some downsides from other people. I just haven't arrived there yet, I think. I'm a little bit jaded, but not super jaded yet. Just
right. So what's next for you? Obviously, you're going to continue working on the stuff you're working on now, but do you have crazy ambitions of, okay, this is what I want to do in a year or 5 years or whatever? So
there are some, and I have some stuff in the works right now that I can't talk about yet because I'm afraid I'm going to jinx it.
Of course.
Yes, because that's always how that happens, because obviously that's how the universe works. And because I feel like I'm still on that streak of what is my life even? I don't understand. So there's one more thing that might be coming up where I'm like, yes, this is not real. None of this is real. And I'm just going to ride this wave until whoever designed my character is like, all right, let's delete that character. Boom, and then I'm gone. So.
Well, hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
But
no, I think a big part for me right now is just finally having time to actually have a social life again, which I haven't had that time I never had the financial means to do that. I haven't been going on vacation. I actually have paid vacation, which is, in Germany, everyone has 6 weeks paid off by law. It's just the way it is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. And over here, it's like you're lucky if you get 2 weeks, that's a lot for some people. And I think I have 3 weeks or even 4 weeks, which is like, that's a luxury. So I want to travel a little bit. I do fly home to see my family at least once a year in Germany because my sister made me an aunt. So that I think that was a
awesome.
trick and a ploy to get me to come home more because now I want to see my nephew.
Yeah, she set you up.
Yes, she did. She really did. That and I don't know, I like to hike. I like to hike. I like to be outside. I don't like the bugs and the spiders, but I deal with them. So I think I'm just trying to figure out what my life still is now because I'm still not used to having this nice paycheck and being able to, just do things and not have to worry about putting food in my mouth and paying my rent.
Yeah.
So I'm still adjusting. I know I'm still adjusting to that, or or heating up my car with my app. I mean,
like what
still
is
adjusting to that one too. My life is so strange.
So I want to then go into Tesla because I need all the insiders information, I know I want one, but I don't know anyone that owns one. So I just read people's reviews and whatever the hell they tell me on the internet. So how do you like the Tesla?
Oh my God. I don't even like cars that much. I'm not a car person and I love my car. It's so bizarre. But I also went from a Geo Metro to a Tesla, the last car I had was a Geo Metro in 2010. To the next car I had was in between. I had a Honda Ruckus, which is a little like moped situation, like a scooter while I was in school. Yeah, I know. So I went from a Geo Metro to a Tesla. So I skipped a couple steps in between, I think. Maybe that's why I'm so impressed by it. I don't know. I love my car. It drives really nicely. I was used to shifting. Germany's mostly manual cars. We don't really have transmission over there. So that was a weird adjustment to me. But it's such a smooth ride. You always have your GPS on it and your tracking and everything. It's, like I said, I can preheat my seats from I wake up in the morning, it's cold outside in Seattle in winter, and I hit the, preheat setting and I walk outside, go into my car and my butt is warm when I sit down. It's amazing.
That's so nice.
It's just a very safe car. We get to charge for free at work. So
I was just going to ask about charging.
Yeah, that one's a tough one if you don't have, I live in an apartment, so on a second floor, I can't actually put an extension cord out to the front with my car from my balcony. I'm like, I don't think that the apartment complex would allow me to do that.
Right.
Yes.
So you only charge at work then?
I charge at work, and then Tesla has that supercharging network that is really extensive. So I've ridden Buffy. I've driven Buffy up and down the West Coast 3 times from LA to Seattle. And not a problem. There's charging stations everywhere, and it takes maybe 20 minutes to charge to 80%. So it's gotten really fast.
That's not bad.
There's less maintenance too. If you don't know anything about cars like me, you just drive them because you don't have you don't need oil changes. Your transmission can't blow out because they don't have one. They have a drivetrain. I don't know what any of it. I do rockets. I don't do cars. So I don't know what any of that stuff means.
I do far more advanced stuff. I don't understand this minute.
My car does not have a LOX tank or a liquid oxygen tank. So I don't understand what's going on. I can't relate. I just go in and I start driving it. I highly recommend this car. I mean, they're not cheap. I have the cheap, the Model 3. I have the cheap one, and it's still not cheap, but I highly recommend it. It is a nice car. I'm never going back to an ICE engine.
So do you have any maintenance that you have to do at all, or have you had any issues with it at all?
I had California drivers. I don't know if you do, but they're terrible. So I had someone run into my car, poor Buffy.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so I mean, I had to get her fixed. But no, I really haven't. Um,
Huh.
I have to clean her, I guess,
Yes.
the outside.
Yeah.
I do not treat Buffy the way she deserves to be treated, man. That inside is pretty filthy right now. I feel so bad. Every time I go outside, I'm
Oh.
like, I need to vacuum you, Buffy.
Okay,
But
Buffy needs to get cleaned.
yeah, she does. She also has I wrapped her in matte black.
Oh.
So I know she has a matte black vinyl wrap, so she looks like the Batmobile a little bit.
I
But
want to see a
regardless,
picture.
yes, I have not posted one on my Instagram yet. I will eventually. No, it's a very good little car. And it is pretty small, so it's nice. It
Yeah.
was fun parking. Very
Was it?
quiet, obviously, because it's an EV. So
Does it park itself, or
it
do you have to park it?
does.
It does park
It
itself.
parks it. She parks herself.
Oh.
She can also pick me up. She can also pick me up when I'm on the parking lot. It was a software update a while back. So if it's raining and which I don't mind the rain. I moved to Seattle by choice. Like I like the rain. But I can you have to keep an eye on your car obviously because it's not completely autonomous yet, but on
Mm-hmm.
private roads and like parking lots, there's a button that says come to me
Mm-hmm.
and she will navigate around the parking lot and come to where you're standing, and then I can just go into my car and drive home after
Oh.
I preheated her. I love my car. It's
Oh
not even
man.
it's a toy. It's such a toy. It's like when iPhones came out and phones became toys. That is what Tesla has done to cars. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah, I
It's
you know,
great.
I am a big fan. I just have too many car desires. Like I want a BMW and I want a Mercedes and then I want a Tesla. So the audio decided that it was going to be really, really crappy towards the end of our conversation, which is why we don't have a true ending. So thank you for listening. And thank you, Melanie, for joining me on this episode. I really appreciate it. And if you have not checked out Bridges in Tech website yet, now will be a good time to go see what we are all about. The website is bridgesintech.com. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Until next time.